do the marches and all of the things we do to try to change society could seem hopeless. Since all human relationships have flaws in them, we cannot create a truly utopian society. You know, the Amish and the Mennonites and Hutterite Brethren still try to work at that in their own context, adapting to change as they see it within their own communities and the outside world. There are no cities of God. There are no cities of brotherly love, even though that would be something we would really like to have. Yet today, we talk about how we continue to be activists in a troubled world. As an introduction to our topic, I would like to invite Whitney Haynes to give us a bit of background about herself and her commitment to activism. Her questions are, what is a safe place for activism? And what is space of sanctuary or a network of safe people we can trust? Whitney.
Thank you. Audrey asked me to introduce myself and how I got involved in activism. So I've been reflecting about that this morning, and I grew up in northeast Edmonton in a poor working class community, and I remember growing up always questioning why some people had more than others. And this brought me to a trip where I lived in Nepal for a couple of years, and I taught kids. And many of the kids I taught, their parents were migrant workers in the Middle East, and so they were growing up by themselves. And then I came back to Edmonton and started engaging with the temporary foreign worker community, because Canada is also involved in the separation of families, so we can bring workers here, but just workers, not families. Then I went to Norway. I was very lucky to study in Norway, and I thought, okay, I'm going to learn more about social justice in this socialist space, and I witnessed a lot of racism from a lot of my fellow students. And just being in Europe and seeing the borders and the people not allowing a certain type of people to belong was quite overwhelming. And then I came back to Edmonton, and we're still part of the same struggle of trying to have borders that keep people out and only allow certain type of people to come in that we think is okay. So now I'd like to share some stories from Edmonton about people that are not allowed to belong. So I got a phone call from someone in Montreal. This was a couple months ago, and the guy said, there's a woman in Edmonton who's pregnant. She's 3 or 4 months along, and she's asking how she can get an abortion. Can you help her? She is undocumented, and she has no health care. And so she can't afford an abortion. And we were running out of time for her to have one. We needed to find a doctor to help her that wouldn't ask for identification and wouldn't ask for money, and which we did. We found one. But she doesn't want to go alone. She really wants to go to this medical appointment with someone else. And I have to work. I'm trying to find a woman that I can trust in the community that would be okay with helping this woman. And I did. I found someone. So our sanctuary net, if we go back to the theme of the month here, grew from a trustworthy doctor to a trustworthy neighbor. And after the appointment, Claire, her pretend name, decided that she was going to give this child up for adoption. But then a week passes, and I get a text, and she keeps asking me all these questions. She's like, how can I hide my stomach from my employer? I'm going to lose my job. And then days later, I get another text. I can't afford the labor costs in the hospital. I don't know how I'm going to pay for the delivery. So she's now started taking out loans from random people just so she can afford to give birth. And just last week she texted me saying, I think I want to keep the baby, but I don't have any maternity employment insurance, right? And I say, no, you won't get any. You do pay taxes, but you won't get any. And she's due next week. We had a meeting at the University of Alberta a few months back, bringing workers, undocumented workers in Edmonton together. Some of them have children, to share their stories and support each other. So we found an empty classroom. We thought this would be a safe space because there's so many empty classrooms on the weekend. It's also accessible. So everyone started sharing their stories. There's a woman who can't afford her cancer treatments. There's a family that has to pay $150 a month just for someone to sign the papers for their housing agreement because they don't have identification. But this is on top of their rent. And most of them are, they're making less than minimum wage. So you just, someone would talk about how they make $9 an hour cleaning. You just have to go to this location in Edmonton and someone will come pick you up and they'll drop you to the place that you need to clean. And I thought that finding work would be a very difficult issue, and it was quite overwhelming to me to find out that it's actually very easy because many people here want to pay less than minimum wage to whoever will do these jobs. So that's not what they're worried about. They're more worried about their safety. And that's when a peace officer entered the room and asking, did we pay to book this room? And everyone was terrified. I don't know how to explain the fear in the air. And I felt like it was my responsibility. I was there. And anyway, we found a way to convince the peace officer that we had the room booked. And but now the workers are terrified to meet again because they're asking, where can we meet? We need a safe space of sanctuary. So I phoned a church after this asking for a safe space for undocumented migrants to meet, and their response was, well, we can't do anything illegal. I know they're not criminals, but we'll keep them in our thoughts and prayers. I got a text just yesterday from another woman, a single mom, saying that she can't make. We had a meeting yesterday at someone's house, and she's like, I can't come to the meeting, and I can't come to the birthday party today because my brother just died in the Philippines, and I'm the only one who can pay for the funeral. And she's, of course, the only one that can't attend. And so these stories, they go on, and they're all within our community. There are an estimated 25,000 undocumented people in Edmonton. This is just an estimate. And the Edmonton City Council just passed, we're actually a sanctuary city by name, but sanctuary city right now is defined as having access to libraries, rec centers, and low-income transit passes without needing identification, which is something all these people had before the City Council passed this motion. So what they really need is health care, which is a provincial legislation. They need education for their kids and just a feeling of security, as they're often, supporting their families back home. So I was reflecting about the theme of a safe place for activism and a people of sanctuary. And I read the 7 principles for the first time, and the 2 that really stood out to me were the inherent dignity and worth of every person and the goal of a world community. And so questioning, how do we build this together, a safe space of sanctuary that honors the dignity of every person? And how do we build a communal, interconnected network of safe people to support the workers in our community that are cleaning our buildings, serving us food, and taking care of are vulnerable members of our society. So there are many things that we can do. And to talk about activism, we can share these stories. We can share the stories that migrants have, and we can provide safe spaces for people to speak for themselves and be part of a connected safety net. But it's not to help and hide people, but to legitimize their struggles as our own, because as privileged Canadians, because as the 7 principles, as I understand them, their dignity is also our dignity. So we can build alliances of faith groups, we can raise funds. Helping is okay, but solidarity is better. And solidarity is activism. So I'm very grateful to be able to speak today. I was a bit uncomfortable because I didn't want to speak for other people. I think it's really important that people speak for themselves, but I've been learning that this is the first step to use my safety and security as a privileged Canadian to open up potential safe spaces for people who do not feel safe and who are struggling to survive and support their families back home. So, thank you very, very much.